In 1533, the largest ransom in human history was paid right here in Peru. A room filled with gold, two more with silver, worth nearly $400 million today. The Spanish took every ounce and then executed the man who paid it anyway. But somewhere in these deadly mountains, 750 tons of additional Inca treasure lies hidden. Treasure hunters have been dying to find it for 500 years. This is the story of the lost Inca gold and why it became history's most cursed treasure hunt. Before we dive into this deadly treasure hunt that's claimed more lives than any other, let's understand what we're dealing with and why people keep dying for it. The year was 1532. The Inca Empire stretched from modern-day Colombia to Chile, the largest empire in the Americas, and its capital, Cusco, was literally covered in gold. Spanish chroniclers describe temples with walls covered in gold plates, gardens with golden corn stalks and silver llamas. To the Incas, gold wasn't money, it was the sweat of the sun god. Then came Francisco Pizarro with 168 men, determined to conquer an empire of 12 million people. November 16th, 1532. Inca Emperor Atahualpa entered the square at Cajamarca with 5,000 unarmed followers, expecting to meet these strange bearded visitors in peace. What happened next was one of history's most brutal ambushes. The Spanish opened fire from three sides. In 1 hour, they slaughtered 5,000 Incas and captured their emperor. Not a single Spaniard died. Held prisoner in this room, which you can still visit today, Atahualpa made a desperate offer. He would fill this room with gold up to the reach of his arm, and the two adjoining rooms with silver in exchange for his freedom. Pizarro agreed. It seemed impossible until gold started arriving from across the empire. For 8 months, treasure poured into Cajamarca. Golden plates stripped from temple walls, ceremonial vessels, jewelry, even a golden throne. The Spanish scribe Pedro Sancho recorded every ounce: 1,326,539 pesos of fine gold. Each Spanish foot soldier received 45 pounds of gold, more wealth than most Europeans would see in a lifetime. But here's what the Spanish didn't know. This was just the beginning. At the exact moment Pizarro was counting his gold, General Rumiñahui was marching toward Cajamarca with 750 tons of additional treasure and 60,000 warriors. This wasn't ransom money. This was the entire golden treasury of the northern Inca Empire, being moved to pay for Atahualpa's freedom. But then came the news that changed everything. July 26th, 1533. Despite receiving his ransom, Pizarro ordered Atahualpa's execution. The last Inca emperor was strangled with a garrote in the very square where he'd been captured. When news reached General Rumiñahui, he made a fateful decision. If the Spanish would betray their word, they would never get their hands on the rest of the treasure. Rumiñahui ordered the vast treasure hoard driven deep into the Llanganatis mountains of Ecuador, some of the most dangerous terrain on Earth. These mountains are shrouded in mist and drenched by rain 300 days a year. Visibility is often zero, and the terrain can kill experienced climbers. According to legend, the treasure was hidden in caves so secret that the indigenous porters were killed to protect the location. And that's where our story should end. But it's actually where the dying began. 1570, 37 years after Atahualpa's death, a Spanish soldier named Pedro de Valverde lay dying in his bed. Valverde had married an Inca princess whose father had told him exactly where the treasure was hidden. On his deathbed, he wrote it all down. The Derrotero de Valverde, Valverde's guide, reads like something from a pirate movie. Place yourself in Pilaro, go to Margasitas, sleep at the foot of the great mountain Guapa. You will see a lake which is like a mirror. Enter the cave and walk until you find the tapir. A tapir, by the way, is a large pig-like animal. Apparently, there's a tapir-shaped rock formation that marks the treasure cave. The treasure trail went cold until the 1850s, when British botanist Richard Spruce arrived in Ecuador hunting for medicinal plants. In the town of Baños, Spruce discovered Valverde's original guide and an accompanying map by botanist Atanasio Guzman, marking ancient Inca mine locations. In 1861, Spruce published both documents in the Journal of the Royal Geographic Society. The modern treasure hunt was about to begin. 1886, American treasure hunter Barth Blake assembled the first serious expedition using Spruce's published guide. If Blake's own writings are to be believed, he actually found the treasure. Taking only what he could carry, Blake left the cave and headed to New York to raise funds for a full excavation. He never made it. Blake disappeared overboard during the voyage. Some say he was pushed. Blake's disappearance began what treasure hunters call the curse of the Llanganatis. Since then, over 100 people have died searching for the treasure. Some notable victims: Erskine Locke, a British Army officer who led 2 expeditions in the 1930s. He survived, but several team members didn't. Eugene Brunner, Swiss explorer who mounted 40 expeditions between 1939 and 1979. He found nothing but danger. Bob Holt, American geologist who died in the 1990s after falling from Cerro Negro Mountain and being impaled on a tree trunk. Today's treasure hunters have advantages Valverde never imagined: GPS, satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar. But the mountains haven't gotten any safer. If anything, climate change has made the weather more unpredictable. Dr. David Brown from the Texas Archaeological Research Laboratory represents a new approach: scientific archaeology rather than treasure hunting. Brown's team is less interested in gold than in understanding what really happened to the Inca treasure, and whether the Llanganatis story is even true. Here's the challenge facing modern researchers. How do you prove a treasure exists without finding it? The Spanish recorded every ounce of gold they received in ransom, but there's no documentation of Rumina Hui's treasure train because it was hidden specifically to avoid Spanish records. We have Valverde's guide, but he wrote it 37 years after the events. We have indigenous oral traditions, but they're deliberately vague to protect the secret. So where does that leave us? 500 years later, with all our technology, are we any closer to finding Atahualpa's gold? The Ecuadorian government now requires permits for treasure hunting in the Llanganatis. They're less interested in finding gold than in preventing more deaths, because the death toll keeps rising. Just last year, 2 German treasure hunters went missing in the Llanganatis and were never found. Maybe the real treasure of the Llanganatis isn't gold. It's what the search reveals about human nature. For 500 years, people have risked everything chasing Atahualpa's gold. They've died for it, killed for it, sacrificed families and fortunes for it. The treasure has become larger than life, a symbol of ultimate wealth just beyond reach, just dangerous enough to make the risk feel worthy of the reward. Did Rumina Hui really hide 750 tons of treasure in the Llanganatis? Did Blake actually find it? Are indigenous communities still protecting the secret after 500 years? Or is the whole thing an elaborate legend, a story that's grown more valuable than any gold? What do you think happened to Atahualpa's treasure? Hidden in the mountains, discovered and kept secret, or never existed at all? Let me know your theories in the comments. And if you're fascinated by history's greatest unsolved mysteries, hit that subscribe button. Next week, we're investigating the Oak Island Money Pit and why it's consumed more treasure hunters than any site in North America.